Today's Toy Spot, we are having a look at the Funko ReAction figures, Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees. Of course, you couldn't have Jason without his trusty machete. It's in there as well. This is a 3 3/4 inch ReAction figure, so it's basically a figure created to give it the idea that this would have been a figure that was released in like the 70s and 80s, where figures were much more simplistic in design. The figure itself looks like it's probably just Jason from I'm thinking part 3. Although the packaging that they used was Jason from Jason Lives, part 6. Down at the top, it says Horror Series, Adult Collectible. This is not a toy. Recommended for ages 17 and up. The back of the package features other figures from the Horror Series. There's Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Eric Draven, Sam, Pinhead, and Ghostface. This all comes to us from the folks over at Funko. You can go to www.funko.com. You can also follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/originalfunko and on Twitter at originalfunko as well. Spot's going to take a break and get this opened up. When we come back, we're getting a better look at Friday the 13th's Jason Voorhees from the ReAction line. There's more heading your way, guys. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. For your accessories, once again, Jason Voorhees comes with a machete. There's no color or anything on it. It's just cast in gray plastic. If you grew up with G.I. Joes or any Star Wars figures, stuff like that back in the day, a lot of their accessories were one color. So despite the fact that you may be looking at this thinking, oh wow, they didn't even put color on it, that's pretty much the point of ReAction figures. They're old retro designed characters that are just essentially being released now. You can take the machete and put it into his hand, just like so, and you have Jason Voorhees with machete. The machete feels like it's not a pliable enough plastic that I would say be very careful with it. If you bend it, it may potentially break. You can also see too, it doesn't stay in his hand very well. You kind of have to angle the machete up for it to fit. When you start angling it down, that's when it runs the risk that it can get a little loose and it falls out. There you have the machete in Jason's hand. Let's bring in the ReAction Freddy, so you guys can see the difference between the two. They are surprisingly a height difference. I really did think for some reason that Jason and Freddy were going to be the same height, at least from the ReAction line of things, but Jason is taller. If you are also wondering, Jason's mask is not removable, which is maybe the one thing I wish that they could have found some way to do. I know it's a retro themed line, so a lot of like figures back in the day probably would not have had things like removable masks, but had they found a way to do that, that would have been kind of neat. I would have loved to have seen what ReAction's version of an unmasked Jason would have looked like. I think that would be kind of funny. He is basically just all green shirt, and then more gray slacks, brown shoes. On the back it says Super 7 Funko LLC 2014. Articulation on Jason, very, very simple. His head just swivels left and right. Shoulders rotate all the way around. And the legs sit. That's basically all they do. You can't even bend the legs back, which is pretty much what all other figures did back in the day too. Once they got to about that point, you couldn't move the legs any further. He doesn't have a lot going on for it, but I have a soft spot when it comes to Jason Voorhees, so I think he's neat. Maybe if Funko would want to reuse the mold. I mean, companies always want to reuse molds as best that they can. If they want to reuse the mold, I mean, I'd be very happy to see them release future Jasons pretty much using just this body and then just, changing things here and there. They could give us, part 4. Part 5. Part 5 would be fairly easy. I mean, you basically would just repaint all of this into a one-piece outfit and then, just change the markings on his mask. There is huge potential, and while it may not be everyone's cup of tea, and I've mentioned that before, reaction figures are something you either really like or you really don't like. It's the equivalent of root beer. If you do really like them, these are fun little figures to pick up. Also, we've already looked at the Freddy, and Spot's going to be looking at the other ones as well. From a rating perspective, and before you jump all over me and say, Spot, there's no way you could give him a rating like that. From a perspective of a reaction figure, if I could categorize them all in that category, Jason Voorhees, I would give him a 7. It's not to say that he is on caliber with like a more super detailed figure, but from the scope of a reaction figure, I think he comes across really well. Today's Toy Spot, let's get the machete up, there we go. Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look. Ooh, NES Jason would also be really cool, but I digress. Today we're having a look at the Funko reaction figures of a Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more videos heading your way, more reaction figures heading your way as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.